Hello and welcome to NDTV Profit. Oxford University Press has just released a compilation of economic essays by noted Indian economist Dr. I.G. Patel. The edition has been edited by Deena Khatkate and Dr. Y.V. Reddy, former Governor of the Reserve Bank of India. Joining us with some reflections on the book and how they are relevant to the current economic scenario is none other than Dr. Y.V. Reddy. Sir, good to see you, especially stone's throw away from RBI and with your RBI tie.
Thank you very much. Once you are associated with RBI, you can never get out of that.
That's a good thing, I think.
Yes.
Your selection of essays, I'm sure, was very deliberate in terms of, what is relevant, what is the most interesting. Let me pick up on one particular, part which you have highlighted in your epilogue as well, and that's the analysis behind inflation. And one of the things that was said by Dr. I.G. Patel was how the war on inflation has to be fought on various fronts, but it has to be accompanied with an active monetary and credit policy. First, let me get, the reason behind picking that statement, that paragraph, highlighting it in your epilogue, and whether it's relevant to the current picture, sir.
I think it is extremely relevant to the current picture. The inflation is not exactly entirely a monetary phenomenon. It's a monetary phenomenon in a restricted sense. And whenever the fiscal situation comes, the demand on the aggregate resources of the economy will be determined very much by fiscal policy, because fiscal policy preempts the resources of the society in some senses. And therefore, underlying that, very often people express the issue of inflation as something which you solve by handling fisc and monetary. But the real issue is that you have to produce goods and services. And that is forgotten because that's a longer term affair. So, Dr. I.G. Patel, who has been both in the government and in the Reserve Bank, made it clear that the debate on inflation should not be viewed as something which deals with growth versus inflation and monetary versus fiscal policy, but it has to be fought on the fronts of various sectors. Incidentally, if you read more essays, in particular after the reform, he has given some lectures. After the reform, actually he mentioned that the reform is not a list of laundry measures in the macro management. It has to be sector by sector. And I think that's what we have. You see, the reform, you can always deregulate and you will get some results. But after deregulating, you have to create a favorable atmosphere for competitive efficiency, which requires sometimes deregulation, sometimes market friendly, not necessarily business friendly. You can be friendly to some business and growth will come. Market friendly atmosphere. So I think in a way why I wanted to say is that the reform has to be a lot more at the sectoral level. Sectoral productivity, sectoral efficiency, removing sectoral bottlenecks. That is the key to fighting the inflation consistent with growth. That should be the highest priority.
Is that where we are failing right now? Because the debate, like you said,
that's what should be done. I won't say failing, but I think the highest priority should be sectoral. How do you make sure that more coal is produced? How do you make sure more power is produced? How do you make sure that more agricultural products are not wasted? That is the reform.
But those are long-term issues. So in the
but that's a problem. As you can't solve the problem of inflation and growth trade-off without tackling them. That's exactly the point that Dr. I.G. Patel was making.
Okay, but in the interim, what do you do, sir? In the interim, do you would you caution against, say, just the textbook scenarios of saying higher interest rates, tighter monetary policy again? Would you caution against that?
Not necessarily. The way it has to be done is like this: that if you think that you can solve the problems in the longer term, then you will get growth only in the longer term.
Okay.
So in the short term, you can't have growth if you can't solve the problems. Therefore, your growth has to be moderated to match your reform in the sectors. If you try to grow more than what your sectoral productivity warrants, it results in inflation or external sector burden or both, as it's happening more or less now. You have pressure on the external sector, you have pressure on inflation.
India's #1 news app just got even better. Download NDTV's new app. Fully optimized for retina display. Full screen view. Faster response time. And Sudoku. NDTV's new iPad app. Download now.